So I'm pretty nervous to talk about this right now. Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. Today's video is sponsored by Wild, and we will be answering a bit of a controversial question that I get daily, and that is my thoughts on how to sustainably lose weight. Yep, we're going there, and we're going there right now.
Oh, it's already been rotten.
Well, almost now. So first, a quick note about my sponsor, Wild. Now, when I was pregnant with E, I started using natural deodorant, but honestly, I found that most of them that I tried actually made me smell worse.
That smells like pure gasoline.
So I was really excited to try out Wild's natural deodorant, especially because of its unique sustainability efforts. So first of all, Wild is aluminum and paraben free, and because it's not an antiperspirant, it doesn't clog pores. Most importantly though, it actually works. Like, it is barely summer now and I am schwitzing profusely already, and my husband has not complained about me smelling, so I say that's a huge win. But they have a bunch of scents, all of which are really lovely. My favorite being the lemon meringue and orange zest. What I also love is that you get a reusable, customizable case that you can then refill with different scents each month. So it's a uniquely sustainable choice. Even the refill packaging is made out of bamboo and is 100% biodegradable so that you can just chuck it into the compost when you're done. The best news is that they ship worldwide and you can choose a one-off purchase or a subscription. So if you want to give Wild a try, check out the link in the description and use my promo code Abby for 20% off of your order. Now, before we get into it with my top tips, I want to preface this video with a reminder that, like my content on intuitive eating, this is not going to be for everyone. Specifically, this content is not intended for folks with complicated histories with food or disordered eating. I know that a lot of people with eating disorder histories still often do want to lose weight, and that is a completely valid desire, but I strongly urge you to seek out the support of a healthcare provider and not get advice from a generalized YouTube video like this. And ultimately, that really goes for everyone. I also want to mention that dietitians and other wellness professionals like myself generally think and operate along a weight loss haze continuum. Some of my colleagues will not work with clients who desire weight loss, while others only work with clients looking to lose weight. I kind of live in the gray. I mean, I believe in client-centered care and also evidence-based informed practice. So I personally would rather someone who wanted to lose weight seek out the support of an evidence-based dietitian than they fall for extreme fad diets that they see online. And this is even more important when weight loss efforts would be really dangerous. And that dietitian could potentially have the training to help the client pivot to other acts of self-care. Now, I also need to, of course, mention that despite people's best efforts, weight loss is never inevitable. It's not a behavior, so it's not something directly within our control. So I don't believe that any dietitian, coach, nutritionist, or trainer can help you lose weight. It's kind of unethical to even suggest that we can. We can give you some tips and tools to shift behaviors, but it's really up to your body to decide what to do. It's for this reason that I often suggest that we take the focus off of the end goal of an arbitrary weight loss number and focus instead on health promoting behaviors. Behaviors that we can actually control. Behaviors that have some evidence associating them with weight loss for some folks. So with that said, I want to share with you a more gentle nutrition approach and set of tips that I would share with a client, patient, friend, or family member who desired weight loss and wanted to do so in the most sustainable way possible. I also chatted a bit with my colleague and friend Abby Langer, author of the new book, Good Food, Bad Diet, so you will see a few little excerpts from her as well. Whew. All right, folks, let's get into it. Tip number 1, think about what you can add, not what you should be taking away. Most of the fad diets out there focus on eliminating certain foods or food groups from our diet. Gluten, sugar, dairy, booze, we're always cutting something out. And cutting out foods you love often works in the short term, but very quickly we burn out, give in, and eat all the forbidden foods. When we let ourselves fall into this scarcity mentality, we go on a bit of a rebellious streak that makes us want what we can't have even more. So I prefer to stop thinking about what we're taking away and focus instead on what we're adding to our diet. So maybe we're making a point to add a serving of salad with our sandwich lunch, or add a source of protein like Greek yogurt to our bowl of cereal at breakfast. We'll get more into the specifics of what to add in some of my next tips, but the point is that even if we don't consciously think about cutting foods out, adding in satiating foods often helps us edge out some of the less nutritious, less satiating foods. For example, when you have a protein-rich breakfast rather than just simple carbs at breakfast, you're less likely to find yourself snacking on the powdered donuts in the office before lunch. The result is that you often end up consuming fewer calories without even noticing that you're doing it. This little mindset tweak of imagining abundance rather than denial is often enough to keep people more dedicated and motivated to stick to a healthy new habit. And this brings me to tip number 2, get in that hunger-crushing combination. My long-term subbies know I'm talking about fiber, protein, and healthy fat. Feeling satiated longer is valuable for most people because
you're not you when you're hungry.
But when it comes to weight loss specifically, satiety is key. It's really hard to create any kind of caloric deficit if you feel like eating your own arm off. But each of these 3 food components have scientific reasoning as to why they support keeping you feeling satisfied for longer. So for instance, protein is the macronutrient that requires the most work to digest, meaning its transit time in your GI tract is longer than that of other foods. Protein has also been proven to reduce ghrelin levels, which, if you remember from some of my earlier videos, is the hunger-stimulating hormone. One study found that participants who consumed 30% of calories from protein compared to those who consumed 15% of calories from protein consumed almost 500 calories a day less when given free rein to eat as they please. As for fat, fat is the strongest inhibitor of gastric emptying, also staying in the stomach for longer and therefore keeping you feeling fuller even longer. And finally, fiber helps to reduce the glycemic impact of carbohydrate-containing foods by slowing down transit time, delaying stomach emptying, preventing blood sugar crashes, and reducing hunger. So yes to fiber, protein, and healthy fats in some combination in most meals and most snacks. Now, tip 3 is to dress up those naked carbs. We've discussed limiting naked carbs as a strategy for folks with PCOS in my video right here, but I actually think that this is a really valuable mindset for everyone to get on board with. Naked carbs are foods like white bread, desserts, white rice, etc. In other words, they're foods lacking the hunger-crushing combination. So this is really just another way of conceptualizing the hunger-crushing combination, as everyone will respond to different imagery and strategy. But my suggestion is to combine your naked carb with some protein and or fat to help boost the satiety factor and slow the blood sugar and insulin response. For example, if you like white bread, have your white bread. I'm not going to force you to give it up or switch to a fermented sprouted bread if that is not enjoyable to you. But smear that bread with some natural nut butter and top it off with berries or throw on some mashed avocado and an egg. This is not only going to help to stave off hunger a lot longer, thereby reducing the likelihood of a snack attack, but it will also keep your insulin levels from jolting up and down. Now, tip 4 is to slow down and tune in. So I know, I need to take my own advice, as I admit that since becoming a parent, I have become the fastest eater of life. It's not good for my digestion, my enjoyment of food, and if I was trying to actively lose weight, which I'm not, it wouldn't be good for that either. One review of the literature did find that eating slower was associated with eating less, while other research suggests that fast eaters are more likely to gain weight compared to slower eaters. This is most likely because it takes about 20 minutes or so for your stomach to communicate to your brain that you're satisfied. And I don't know about you, but I do not need 20 minutes to polish off a pint of Ben & Jerry's. So my suggestion is to carve out time as much as you can for you to sit down and enjoy your meal. If that means you need to pencil meal times into your day planner or set a Google Calendar alert so that they're not just like an afterthought, do it. Now I want you to imagine your hunger like a gas gauge. Ask yourself, where are you on the hunger scale from 0 to 10 before you start eating? As you eat, tune into your hunger and ask yourself again, where are you now? If you started at a 2 or 3 and maybe you're halfway through what's on your plate, are you a 5 now? Are you a 6? Are you still a 3? It's okay not to see an abrupt shift or even be able to recognize what it feels like to satisfy your hunger yet. This is something that definitely takes a lot of practice to hear, especially if you spent a lot of time really heavily restricting. But now, keep eating until you feel at a place that is comfortable for you. For some people, that might be a 6 or a 7 or an 8, especially for a lot of experienced intuitive eaters. But for others, it might feel really uncomfortable to be anything less than a 10. That's okay too. I don't want to turn this into the hunger fullness diet. But you might find that with enough data collection and enough mindfulness, that maybe a 10 no longer feels so good anymore. You're never going to know though, of course, if you just rush through the meal and miss those early warning signs that you're full. So that brings me to tip number 5, get rid of eating distractions. Even if you're eating at a snail's pace, it's hard to tune into your body's internal cues if you're surrounded by external distractions. I'm talking about your phone, your computer, TV, driving, walking, doing all the things at once, as I admittedly have attempted. #parenthood. But we do know that distracted eating is often one of the biggest triggers for mindless eating. An analysis of the research found that folks who ate with distractions ate 10% more than those who ate without distractions. It not only seems to have an impact on how much you eat during the distracted meal, but also in subsequent meals as well, as we often forget that we even ate or how much we ate. It's like my hubby who will tell me that he didn't eat anything all day, but then I've watched him eat a bagel, banana, apple, cheese, and like half a rotisserie chicken while taking business calls over the kitchen sink. When we eat on autopilot, the food just kind of somehow makes it into our mouths. So power down and invest in the time to eat uninterrupted, and then use that mental bandwidth to refer back to that hunger scale from within. Okay, folks, on to tip 6, meal prep. Because we're not great at making mindful decisions when we're ill-prepared. If we go back to that analogy of our body as a car and our hunger being the gas gauge, it's really hard to find the best deal on gas if we haven't mapped out our route. When we get desperate, we're likely to overspend at the bougie full-service station. The same goes for food and nutrition. I know we're all busy, but I do see meal prep as a very small investment. So everyone does meal prep differently. Some people like to pick a few recipes and then make a big batch of like a few full meals to be divvied up into containers for the week. Personally, I get bored of this. I also find it makes it really hard to honor my cravings in the moment because I feel obligated to eat like 5 days of the same recipe that maybe I was craving a whole week ago. So I prefer to make meal components and then combine them in different ways throughout the week. So for example, I might grill up a bunch of chicken breasts and bake off some tofu, make a big pot of quinoa or rice, and then chop up and roast a ton of veg. Then I have the building blocks for different salads, soups, stir fries, and sandwiches that I can mix and match with, like a different sauce or garnish. So next is tip 7, do a fridge and pantry makeover. No, I'm not actually saying that you need to go on a kitchen detox and throw out all the junk before your diet begins. I actually find that in a lot of cases, this tends to trigger a Last Supper binge where, you're thinking, oh my God, I gotta eat all the chips and all the ice cream in the house today because diet
starts tomorrow.
I'm actually suggesting that you simply reorganize things to make more nutritious foods more convenient and more accessible. For me, this is kind of an extension of the meal prep tip, but it doesn't necessarily require more cooking, which is great. I always recommend washing and prepping lots of nutritious stuff and then placing it front and center in the fridge or pantry so that the moment hunger hits, it's the most intuitive and convenient choice to make. If you really want a little chips or some ice cream, it's okay to keep them in the house, but place them somewhere where you'd have to actively seek them out, not just constantly grab them because they're the first thing that you see. Again, this encourages us to be more mindful and deliberate about our food choices, even more indulgent ones, which will in turn usually lead to greater satisfaction and less mindless overeating. All right, tip number 8, approach trigger foods wisely. If you've made it this far, you know that I'm not a fan of overt restriction. And that means that I don't think that any foods should be completely off limits, even when you're trying to lose weight. If I was coaching on intuitive eating and improving somebody's relationship with food or disordered eating recovery, I would suggest allowing yourself said trigger food every day. And this may work for a lot of people who are trying to lose weight who have a history of yo-yo dieting. So to explain this, I'll share my story. When I was struggling with food, my trigger was sugary cereal. I was obsessed. So as part of my healing process, I started to just make it part of my routine. I challenged myself to have a bowl of sugary cereal every morning without guilt or shame until eventually the novelty kind of wore off. Now I have no interest in sugary cereal when it's in the house. In fact, I signed up for a nostalgic cereal of the month delivery club, and I have only had like a handful of each box. Having said that, I also understand that not everyone is at a point in their relationship with food where they feel confident having all of their trigger foods just hanging around. So in this case, particularly in the context of weight loss, I would suggest either mindfully and intentionally planning to buy them or go out for them, and when you do, enjoying them guilt-free. My friend Abby Langer, author of the new book, Good Food, Bad Diet, calls this awareness, not restriction. So yeah, to me, it's like you're aware that this food is easy for you to overeat, so you're being intentional and mindful as you enjoy it, but you're still approaching it with permission so as not to trigger a binge restrict cycle. All right, moving on to tip 9, make water your BFF. So I think it's a really common piece of diet advice to not drink your calories when trying to lose weight, which often follows that you should avoid all juice, soda, alcohol, and sugary coffee drinks. My approach is to choose water for hydration purposes and to work everything else into your diet the same way that you would like a fun ice cream cone with friends or family Friday pizza night. The reason why I'm more intentional about limiting calorie-laden beverages compared to food is that we know it's easier to override our natural hunger and fullness cues when we drink our calories compared to eating them. There are a few potential reasons for this, but experts believe that cognitively, People have a harder time deriving psychological satisfaction from drinks because they just mindlessly chug them back, while we interact longer with food through smelling and biting and chewing and intentionally swallowing. Liquids also travel faster through the GI tract, so they alter satiety and hunger hormones like ghrelin differently than food, especially if it's a drink with little to no protein, fiber, or fat. Research suggests that even when eating intuitively, we just don't fully compensate for the calories that we consume in liquids by eating less food. And as a result, it's easy to gain weight when drinking a lot of calories. In fact, one study on over 50,000 women found that those who increased their intake of sugar-sweetened drinks from 1 a week to 1 per day added 358 calories daily and gained significant weight, while women who reduced their intake cut 319 calories. Now, if juice is your thing, or you need like double cream and double sugar in your coffee to function in life, then of course, work that into your day as you would anything else fun that will make your eating pattern more sustainable and enjoyable. I'm also not going to get into the hierarchy of healthfulness of beverages. I'm well aware that juice contains more micronutrients than pop. But what I'm saying is to choose water for hydration, whole foods for nutrients, fiber, and satiety, and sugar-sweetened beverages for pleasure, flavor, and fun. On to tip 10, soul search to find your beloved food faves. When you've been dieting restrictively for a really long time, it's not uncommon for any stereotypically demonized or bad foods to become overwhelmingly alluring. You know, you were on the paleo diet and told you can't have dairy, and even though maybe you never cared much for ice cream before, you suddenly find yourself binging on it and just can't stop. So take some time to figure out what you actually truly like. This goes for so-called healthy foods as well as the alleged junk. Through this, you'll maybe discover what special foods you'll enjoy fully and more mindfully that will result in feeling truly satisfied rather than continually going on a hunt for what you really want. And that also means diving deep to determine what diet alternatives are sufficient alternatives and which are not. If you love Halo Top, great. But if eating a pint of Halo Top triggers a satisfaction hunt for the real deal, and in the process you need to eat a bag of chocolate chips, a few low-fat popsicles, and then plow through your Ben & Jerry's, probably not a great choice. So figure out what foods you truly want and enjoy and work them strategically into your week. All right, so on to tip 11, focus on stress and sleep. Now, this tip deserves a whole video in itself, and also I know I'm a hypocrite. I've got the worst sleep and stress patterns, but I'll try to keep this brief. Long story short, there is solid evidence that skimping out on these basic acts of self-care can be detrimental to weight loss efforts. Evidence suggests that lack of sleep can increase our hunger hormone ghrelin, reduce our satiety hormone leptin, and as a result, can increase appetite and potentially our weight. It may also interfere with the reward center in the brain, resulting in greater cravings for higher sugar and higher fat foods. It's therefore not surprising that a 6-year prospective study found that those who slept less than 5 hours or more than 9 hours a night were 35% and 25% more likely to experience a 5-kilogram weight gain over 6 years, respectively. Likewise, we have ample evidence to suggest that increases in the stress hormone cortisol is associated with weight gain over time. This increase in cortisol tends to result in us gravitating towards more accessible food because, we likely lack the mental energy to plan and prep and cook. Not to mention, we use food as a coping mechanism for said stress. But one study also found that women who reported one or more stressors within a 24-hour period burned over 100 calories less than non-stressed women. So there is apparently some metabolic alterations happening as well, which is really interesting. All that said, I know from my own experience with insomnia and anxiety that this is all easier said than done. And that the mere thought of not sleeping or being stressed causing weight gain, that can be enough to actually perpetuate more stress and insomnia. So it can become a vicious cycle, and I would need a whole video to help you unpack solutions for this. But I bring it up to give you some hopeful encouragement to prioritize your mental health, because so much of weight loss is not just about choosing kale over cookies. And that brings me to tip number 12, acknowledge your emotional eating patterns and intercept. Again, this is a big topic, so I'm really just gonna scratch the surface here. But in the words of my partner in crime, Abby Langer, try not to weaponize food. It's normal and healthy to eat in response to emotions sometimes, since food is intrinsically and socially linked to celebration, mourning, culture, and more. But when it becomes our only coping mechanism to deal with our emotions, it becomes a dangerous weapon. So try to experiment with other coping strategies for difficult times, like journaling, walking, a hot shower, doodling, meditation, or talking to a friend. And if you're finding yourself consistently turning to food to manage your emotions, a licensed therapist can definitely help. All right, moving on to tip 13, choose whole foods more often. I don't believe in setting arbitrary guidelines or rules on how much of your diet should be from whole, unprocessed, or minimally processed foods like yogurt or frozen fruit versus ultra-processed snack foods or fast foods. There is no quality evidence that I'm aware of that would inform a hard and fast ratio like this. And I really just see it as another rule to obsess over and inevitably break. So my advice instead is to think of convenience foods as assistants to the whole foods doing the heavy lifting in your diet. If that store-bought ranch dressing is going to help you get a salad on your plate, eat the damn ranch. If popping a frozen pizza into the oven once a week means that you help reduce your stress and get to bed at a reasonable hour, pizza party it is.
Pizza party.
Focus on the majority of your diet coming from whole or minimally processed foods, and let go of any guilt associated with the rest. Next is tip 14, move your body in ways that feels good. I actually think it's helpful to decouple our association of exercise with weight loss. Yes, of course, exercise contributes to a caloric deficit, which in turn can enable weight loss. But research suggests that exercise doesn't contribute as much as we might like to think to weight loss efforts, and putting too much stock into it can likely be detrimental by giving people a false sense of entitlement to extra calories because they put in the work. Having said that, we know there are tons of benefits to exercise, even if weight loss isn't one of the most significant ones. So my suggestion then is to just focus on movement you enjoy. You don't have to fill a bucket of sweat for it to count. Ultimately, if you don't enjoy the movement, you're not going to stick to it, or you're going to let it encourage overconsumption as a reward for a punishing regimen. So incorporate some daily movement into your day as an act of self-care, ideally something to support metabolic muscle like some resistance training, but ultimately make it something that you can stick to for life. And finally, tip number 15, be kind to yourself. Think of this journey as a marathon, not a sprint. Please do not make it a sprint. Because if your running skills are anything like mine, there's a good chance you're gonna fall on your face and never want to run again. In other words, if you rush it, statistically, you're way more likely to gain that weight right back. And since we need to look at this as a long game, I also don't recommend weighing yourself too often. And for some, maybe not at all. The scale is just one tool that may be supportive for some people and toxic for others. So everyone will have success markers that work best for them. But if the weight loss stalls, please do not freak out. You're not failing, so do not give up and forgo any progress that you've made in the healthy habits that you've formed. Shift the focus to other markers of success, at least temporarily, to help you maintain momentum, even if the number on the scale isn't what you want to see. Weight loss is so complicated, and as much as we want to simplify it to calories in and calories out, our bodies often have other plans. So the best thing that we can do is to work with our body, not against it, and give ourselves some grace. As you can see, my goal with these gentle nutrition and lifestyle suggestions is to shift the focus away from denial and restriction and toward more additive considerations that focus on self-care, nourishment, and optimizing nutrition. A reminder that this is not an exhaustive set of nutrition tips, and really, if you're looking to find solutions that work for you, you'll want to work with a dietitian for personalized care. But if you're sick of the extreme diet roller coaster and associated weight cycling, I hope this video offered some evidence-based, long-term lifestyle and behavior changes that you can consider. And that is all that I have for you guys today, folks. Thank you again to Wild for sponsoring this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on what you'd like to see me review next. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!